opportunity to address this issue in this hearing, and I really want to thank the witnesses, particularly Admiral McAllister, who will come in the second panel, and Lieutenant Commander Young McClear for your service to our nation. Each day, the men and women of the United States Coast Guard risk their lives to keep our country safe, and we commend you for taking an oath to do so. I represent a district in Texas that, while not a coastal district, Texas is obviously a coastal state, and we've got a bunch of proud members of the Coast Guard who are working diligently, and particularly there dealing with the flow of dangerous narcotics and the cartels that operate along our border, and the Coast Guard is right there on the front line. So we really do appreciate any others, members of the Coast Guard who are here in this room as well, and thank you for your service. The Coast Guard does play a vital role in protecting our nation's borders, maritime environment, and economy. In an average day, the men and women of the Coast Guard conduct 45 search and rescue operations, saving on average 10 lives. But that's not all. The Coast Guard stops migrants from entering the country illegally, conducts vessel security boardings, prevents foreign vessels from illegally entering United States waters, prevents drugs from entering our country. In an average day, members of the Coast Guard interdict 874 pounds of cocaine and 214 pounds of marijuana. I'm sure most of us watched the Coast Guard's video in July showing members of the Coast Guard Cutter Monroe jumping into a submarine packed with cocaine in the middle of the Eastern Pacific Ocean. The sub contained 5 suspected drug smugglers and 17,000 pounds of cocaine with a street value of over $230 million. This is the story of a broken system that we've addressed many times in this committee. It's also the story of a Coast Guard that's on the front lines dealing with a broken system. And I might add, if we were to do our job as a country, instead of wasting time through political shenanigans as we've been seeing unfolding heavily over the last 3 months, then we would secure the border of the United States. We would give more tools to the Coast Guard to be able to do their job. That narco sub was one of 14 drug smuggling vessels the Coast Guard intercepted between May and July of this year off the coast of Mexico, Central America, and South America. That's just one example of the heroic actions members of the Coast Guard take every day to protect the safety of our nation's borders and waterways. Today, my Democratic colleagues have called this hearing to showcase, not to showcase the valiant efforts of the Coast Guard, but to demand this branch of our military make changes to its bullying and harassment policies. Now, to be clear, we should not tolerate a single act of bullying or harassment against a member of any branch of our armed services. If a member of our armed services experiences bullying or harassment, they should have an avenue to report these behaviors, and actions to remedy the situation should be taken immediately. My Democrat colleagues released a report this morning, I think, or are about to release a report. I don't know if the chairman can confirm that or not.
Yeah, it has been released.
Okay. And released a report that found that the Coast Guard military leadership failed to conduct prompt, thorough, and impartial investigations of allegations of harassment and bullying. Now, these are troubling allegations, and I'm certainly glad that we're going to be able to address some of those in this hearing today. But the Democrats also found that significant improvements to policies and procedures are needed to ensure full and consistent enforcement of anti-harassment and hate incident policies. These conclusions are based off of observations made by the majority from studying 2 cases of allegations of harassment and bullying. And I would note that the GOP, we got the information, I believe, over the weekend, and did not sign on to the report because we thought it was more important to take more information in and looking into the report. Doesn't mean that the allegations don't have some merit, but when we get these things on the Saturday, and this is the point I was making a little bit earlier, we are constantly now spending our time dealing with a nonstop 24-hour-a-day impeachment effort, which is consuming the time of the Judiciary Committee, the Oversight Committee, and the members of this body. And then we get a report on Saturday on something that was as important as the allegations that we're currently seeing here. And we've got to have the time to be able to look at that, digest it, and make the right opinion. So I'm glad we're going to have the hearing, but I would have suggested that maybe we should have a report after we have the hearing, and that we take in this information, because that's how hearings should operate. I hope the testimony today provided can supply a wider basis upon which to make these conclusions, and if there are indeed issues which the policies and procedures governing allegations of harassment and bullying are investigated at the Coast Guard, they of course should be fixed. And with that, I yield back to the chairman.
Thank you kindly, Mr.